Hello, welcome to Meet Me at the Movies Open Dialogue. Noel T. Manning the second here, and really happy to have with us today Michael B. Chait, the producer, editor, director. Did I miss anything of this World War II what if epic Wolf Hound? Anything else I missed out of that? But I know you had the idea, so is there like a writing credit in here for you as well, Michael?
Well, I was not technically the editor. Our
Okay.
amazing editor, Shanina Maria, did all of that, and she is incredible. But I gave her enough notes that she comically has a binder that's like this thick that she likes to remind me about. But no, I directed. I came up with the story with my writing partner, Tim Ritchie. He wrote the script. I produced with our awesome producing partner, Sue Witham. And I did operate the camera sometimes, but I did not get a credit for that. But that's plenty, directing
Yeah,
alone is plenty.
exactly. Well, and this was your directorial debut as well. And I tell you, anybody taking on directing a project of any magnitude is something. So taking that first step out is pretty monumental, and you did it with this epic period piece. So kudos, man, kudos on that.
Thank you very much. Let's see, how do I put this? I was aware that I was biting off quite a bit more than I could probably chew, but I was like, I thought it was maybe that, it was that. I mean, it turned out to be an extremely large undertaking, but these are the kind of movies I grew up loving, and the kind of stuff that made me want to become a filmmaker has always been, telling a great story, but doing it in a spectacular, big way. And we tried not to let the budget, which was a shoestring compared to what it hopefully should have been. We didn't want to let that get in the way. We did every trick in the book to bring you guys the biggest and best movie possible. And I will say there were many moments during the shoot where I went, wow, this is a little more it's a little bigger than I thought it was going to be, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm very thankful with the film that we have.
You talked about growing up loving film, loving cinema. Share a little bit about that love of cinema, and maybe some examples of war epics that you were drawn to that maybe gave you a little bit of inspiration for this.
Well, I did grow up loving movies right away. I mean, truly one of my first memories is watching the original Star Wars or Top Gun on my parents' old VCR, with
Yes.
VHS tapes, and kept rewinding them to my favorite parts and all of that. And that was like back in the days of like tracking and all that kind of stuff. And I fell in love right away. And before I even knew that I wanted to be a director, I knew instinctively, like I loved that part, of the
Yeah.
storytelling and movie making. And it's interesting that you mentioned war epics, because I grew up watching a lot of them. My dad is a pilot and also a World War II aficionado.
Yeah.
So we, like, every time there was a marathon of war movies on TV, we watched them. And at the same time, though, and I think, if you've seen the movie, hopefully this comes through very clear. We wanted to create something we've really never seen, which was a classic, golden age 1930s or 40s war movie combined with an 80s and 90s action movie. And it doesn't sound like the most, like pieces that would fit so easily. But in my mind, I was like, oh, this is going to be the coolest thing in the world. And so I grew up loving, the works of James Cameron, John Woo, Tony and Ridley Scott, of course, Spielberg and Lucas, John McTiernan, Sam Raimi, who
Yeah.
grew up like 20 minutes from my house,
Yeah.
Russell Mulcahy, like all of those guys. Yet I also, like I said, I always loved Battle of Britain from, I
Right.
think, 1968, The Longest Day,
Yeah.
things like Batan, or I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. A lot of John Wayne movies and John
Right.
Ford movies.
Yeah.
And, it's that the feelings of like the camaraderie, between the men that are going into battle, and, the weight of everything, plus the super action, that I tried
Yeah.
to insert. It's kind of a concoction,
Yeah.
but so far I think there's a lot of people that are thankfully liking it,
Oh
and
yeah.
that to me was really the goal. Even though again it was a pretty ambitious one for a first
Yes.
movie.
Well, you nailed it, and I think
Thank you.
all of those different elements of what you're talking about, I really felt like this film served as a love letter to many of those inspirations that you talked about, and in some of the filmmakers you talked about as well. One of the things that, well, several things stood out to me, but one that stood out to me and everybody else that I've spoken with relates to the aerial shots and the aircraft. And I know that that was an interesting journey, and you knew you wanted to do it this way. So talk about what this way was in getting the aircraft and those aerial shots.
Okay, well, the best way I can start into that was I was lucky enough to be doing a commercial for the Yankee Air Museum in Michigan in 2013. I stepped onto their B-17 Flying Fortress bomber, which is beautifully restored. As you see in the movie, it looks brand new. And I felt this weight, like this rush of emotion that hit me, just realizing, whoa, the real guys that were younger than me, like 16, 17, 18, 19, that were really doing this, really fighting the Nazis in World War II. They stood here, so I really need to do them justice. And I thought also, like, wait a minute, I think there's a movie we can make out of this. So over the years, we recruited the Yankee Air Museum, the Military Aviation Museum down in Virginia Beach, and they brought the B-25 bomber, the Spitfire, the Hurricane, both P-51s, and the Messerschmitt BF-109, which I can't even believe there's one still flying, that's that original. And that was a little eerie to film with, but it was so cool. And the biggest element to the aerial shots, I came up with lots of ideas, but Craig Hosking, our aerial coordinator, he's the one that made it possible and executed it safely. And he did Dunkirk with Christopher Nolan. He flew on Pearl Harbor with Michael Bay, and his resume is like 300 movies long.
Yeah, Craig's
and
amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah, and the aerial DP, Dwayne McClintock, he's up there, and I mean, it's like a roller coaster you're riding, and he has to just focus in on getting beautiful shots while pulling G's. And like, I just could not be more impressed with those two guys. And the fact that we did it for real in the air. I ever since I was a kid, Top Gun by Tony Scott is the king, and I still think it's the king. It's like the way he did it, the way that it was not only real, but so stylized and so just kick-ass and emotional at the same time. To me, that was the bar to hit, and so that's why we committed to something so. You might think it's unattainable, but I found that if you get people excited and passionate and really, let them see what you want to do, if they're into it, that they'll help you make it a reality. And just all those guys and all the pilots, I owe everything to for those scenes.
Yeah, and your cast was pretty committed as well to some of these scenes, especially those aerial shots.
Yes, James Maslow especially. His first day, it was like, "Hi, nice to meet you in person. It's been so nice talking to you on the phone. We're throwing you into the back of a P-51. You're going to get flipped upside down. We're going to pull about 3 or 4 Gs, and I'll be on the radio. Have fun." So it was. I mean, he was to call him a trooper is an understatement. Several of the other actors went up in the B-17, and we filmed up there for real in the cockpit and out some of the waist guns. And then the B-25, when James went up in that, I got a text after the first flight. And I haven't told this story very much. The Wes Gathright, our DP, the director of photography, he was up there handheld with a camera, and the entire text read, "Buy Dramamine now." And I thought, oh no, oh God.
That's awesome.
And James basically just walked out. He was very calm, and he's just like, "I just need a few minutes." And he slept for about 2 hours after like that thing was like a rocket, and he's a very, very good friend and actor for doing that.
Wow. Well, I love the cinematography. I love the editing choices, and Uh, I got a chance when I was in college to work on a period film with 20th Century Fox, Last Mohican. So the
You worked on
challenge,
Last of the Mohicans?
yeah, I did.
Oh, that's awesome. I should be interviewing you about that.
So the challenge of period filmmaking, I have a very close appreciation and understanding for. Everything from the production design to the props to the costumes. There's just so much you have to pay attention to. So I'd love to hear you share some of that, because that always draws my attention when I'm looking at period films.
Well, I'll tell you, our costume designer, Jessica Van Ash, and our production designer and art director, Brandon Ottenbacher, they had their hands full from day one. And, the reenactors that we worked with, the World War II reenactors from several different groups in the Midwest, and some came from down south. Again, the passion they had for bringing the story to life and the movie world to life. They brought, I mean, so many of the ground vehicles, the tables with radio equipment all over them, the flags. I mean, everything was very authentic.
Yeah.
And we worked overtime to keep it that way. And for an independently made film, which before Lionsgate picked us up, we were very independent, and it was a large amount of actors for any movie, but especially a lower budgeted movie.
Right.
And to have just everyone had to go through the wardrobe checks, the anachronism checks, make sure there's
Yes.
no watches from present day, make sure there's no glasses from present day.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, doing action at the scale we were doing.
Right.
So it was a very large undertaking, and I mean, my hat is off to everybody in just the art, the props department. Dave
Yeah.
Gordy,
Yes.
he brought a bunch of stuff as well, prop wise, and we blow him up in the hangar shootout as an homage to his participation. So
Yeah.
it was very I mean, yeah, it definitely made it more focused, more harder. Every shot outside, we had to like frame out telephone poles
Right.
and
Right.
anything on the horizon. And there actually were entire cities and subdivisions in the aerial shots, if the camera was wide enough, that were digitally painted out
Wow.
by our visual effects team. Yeah. Ryan Urban is our VFX supervisor, and he had a huge amount of people working on the film. And one of the things he did was, if we screwed up and you saw modern factories or swimming pools and things that were obviously not in 1944, they painstakingly erased all of that.
Wow.
So I mean, I still don't even know how they did some of that.
Yeah. They did marvelous job. They did a marvelous job on that. You mentioned earlier about your dad being the pilot. Did he give you any technical advice on this project? Did he serve as a technical advisor in any form or fashion?
He did. He was there every single day, and he loved it. And he was flying ever since I think he was 17
Wow.
when he got his license. He was a certified flight instructor teaching other people how to fly, I think before he was 20. And he recently was awarded the FAA Wright Brothers Safety Award, which is if you've had no accidents for 50 years. So like that's absolutely
Wow.
incredible.
That
And
is incredible.
yeah, and so I mean, he was in heaven. Like, he's always taken me to air shows and
Yeah.
gotten me in to see cool planes on Air Force bases over the years. But I was very, very excited and proud to be able to say, like, here's a front row seat to stuff
Wow.
that nobody ever gets to see.
Yeah.
And like, we took him up in the B-17 multiple times. And he was absolutely our aviation kind of like safety checker. Not only with behind the scenes, but like on the screen too. Like there were definitely a lot of times when he said, maybe you should have them do this, or maybe that is
I love that.
over here. And that was a dream come true, to be able to work with my dad on this.
Wow. Especially on your first project too. I mean, that's in a project that marries his love of flight and your love of flight growing up in it as well. That's awesome, man. That is really awesome. I'm glad you got a chance to do that. I'm glad he was so involved in this process. Whenever you develop an idea and you think about what you want to see, what you want to create, and what you want it to look like once all the editing's done, from the development through the pre-production, the production, and then the post. When you think back, was there a moment when you were shooting that you knew, or a moment or a scene or a day that you knew, oh, we've got something, and I can't wait to see it on the big screen?
You know, there were two moments,
Okay.
actually. The first one is day 2 of principal photography down in Virginia Beach and Suffolk in Virginia. And you know, day 1, the only thing we were able to do was some, like, you know, the camera flying through cloudscapes, because just everything took a little longer to set up, and we were rained out during the day, so we didn't have time to do dogfighting or aerial sequences with the other aircraft. But day 2 was the first time that, you know, the P-51s got up with the B-17, and we were able to do, you know, the action you see in the movie.
Right.
And on the very first flight, when they came back down with the memory cards and put them in the computer, and I first saw that incredible aerial footage they were getting, it was like a light switch moment. I was like, okay, this is working. This is actually working. I can't believe this. And so that was moment number 1, because there's like behind the scenes of me going like, this looks like Pearl Harbor. This is incredible. And the second moment was the interrogation scene, or the interrogation room scene, because no spoilers, but John Turk's character, Colonel Krieger, he doesn't really end up interrogating the guy, but that scene was definitely the most serious, the most we called it like the Schindler's List scene. And you know, that's in there for a reason. That, I mean, I'm a Jewish man. My family comes from a very, you know, Jewish roots in the Metro Detroit area, and so I grew up learning all about the Holocaust, all about the Nazis, and I wanted this to be much more Indiana Jones than Saving Private Ryan. But I didn't want to ever lose the weight and the emotion and the meaning, that like, this is the greatest evil that these guys fought, that the greatest generation fought. And that scene was written specifically to hopefully scare the living crap out of people, and like make you remember, it's like, oh, it's not all just fun and games. And take 1 was so harrowing, because we did the whole scene at once, and that it used to be, before editing, it was like 9 minutes. So in the final film, it's like maybe like 6. But that entire take, everyone was so mesmerized by the acting that those guys were doing, that Taylor Novak and John Turk were doing, and the script was working. And one of the camera assistants forgot to focus at one point, because he was so into it that John Turk moves like this and his eyes go out of focus. And afterwards I was like, hey man, what happened? And the guy said, I'm so sorry, I was so into the scene, I forgot to pull the knob. And when I saw that as it was happening, I thought like, okay, no matter what else happens on the shoot, this scene is special. Like, this is going to resonate with people. And so far, thankfully, it has, from comments that I've heard.
Absolutely, it does. Michael P. Chait, our guest right here on Meet Me at the Movies Open Dialogue. The film is Wolf Hound. It is a World War II what if epic. And Michael, just want to give you a chance to share any final thoughts or comments you want to make sure you share with our audience.
Well, I would say thank you in advance for hopefully going to see the movie. And you can see it on Amazon and Apple right now, but it definitely looks better on a big screen. The only other thing I'd say is, other than thanking you so much for having me on, is I hope everybody enjoys the film, and I hope that you both have fun, but that it also, packs some power and makes you think a little bit just about what those guys really did back then, so that we could live in the world we do today.
Wow. Michael B. Chait, our guest right here on Meet Me in the Movies Open Dialogue. We really appreciate you taking the time, and for all of those watching, that's a wrap.